So as a self-proclaimed gym rat, not only by myself, but also by the man in the mirror, I always try to find meal prep recipes that not only taste good when you cook them, but also taste good after 5 days when you eat them. My friends and family think it's disgusting, and I certainly agree. Anyways, at some point, I kind of got sick and tired of watching videos of people doing meal prep. I've been using ChatGPT more often in my life, and I figured, okay, what if it could actually also help me make recipes too, so I don't have to watch the video, I can save some time. Now, I'm by no means a good cook. I'm also not even a cook. I'm just somebody who can follow recipes really well. That's what I've always told anybody who asks me if I can cook good. To the recipe, I asked ChatGPT if it can give me an easy, high-protein recipe for 2 people, as in 2 servings, but also one that tastes fantastic, ? And it responded with a recipe that seemed pretty straightforward. It said garlic herb chicken with quinoa, whatever that is, and veggies. The ingredients are pretty much straightforward, except at some point when I went out to buy everything, I realized my supermarket does not have quinoa, and I don't even know what quinoa is. I had to Google quinoa, and it looked like something that I would only find at like Whole Foods supermarket or something, and not at a discounter. I live in Germany, so I went to Kaufland. I think it's like the Walmart equivalent of the US, maybe not, who knows. I've never been to the US. But yeah, I pretty much asked ChatGPT if I could switch to white rice instead, and it said, you know what, sure, you can do it. I'm not sure if it was going to taste better with the quinoa. I don't want to do any spoilers when it comes to the taste. So the ingredients were pretty much 2 boneless, skinless chicken breasts, a cup of quinoa, which has been replaced with rice, 2 cups of chicken broth, which we no longer need anymore. We're just going to cook rice with water, 2 tablespoons of olive oil, 2 cloves of garlic, 1 tablespoon of fresh parsley, 1 tablespoon of fresh thyme, 1 lemon, salt, pepper to taste, a cup of cherry tomatoes halved, and a cup of spinach. I brought out all of my ingredients just to start preparing. One thing that I like to do always, and I think that everyone should do, just wash your rice. Afterwards, maybe give it a little flick of the wrist. Once you're done washing it, try to set it on your sink. Somehow this worked well. I was able to balance it out. I was kind of proud of myself, and let it sit for a few minutes to pretty much dry out a bit. The recipe called for me to pretty much cut it into cubes. No, the recipe didn't. I just did that for some reason. Force of habit, apparently. Undress your chicken as slowly as possible. What you're seeing right now is me putting on gloves. I don't like touching chicken with my bare hands. I don't know why. Plus, I've also always felt like gloves were a bit more sanitary. I never really looked into it. It just made sense to me because we're going to be mixing it as well once we add all the spices and the olive oil, etc., etc. I also like to give the chicken a nice pat. I like to give it a pat. I like to dry it out a bit. The reason for that is it helps it sear. It helps it develop color. Once again, disclaimer, I'm not a cook. This is just regurgitated information that I've heard from other videos. I also saw a little nasty part on this chicken, and I don't know if you guys do it. I like to cut it off. I don't want to see it. It might be healthy. It might have extra protein. There might be nothing wrong with it, but visually to me, it always looked unappealing. When I see blood, I kind of start to remember that this is actually a actual living thing, and the guilt trip starts setting in that I'm just eating like a live animal, and I'm not looking for that. So I guess out of sight, out of mind. I should definitely find a way to make this footage much shorter. I originally recorded like an hour, and then I cut it down to 40 minutes, and I figured, you know what? I'm just going to play it and sit in front of the computer and watch it and talk into the microphone. How do you even make good cooking YouTube videos? Like, I did analyze some of the other people in this space and how they make their videos. A lot of them just talk as they're cooking. I feel like that would stress me out a bit too much. Like, I can barely cook. Once we're done slicing the chicken, we're gonna bring out our even smaller cutting board. At about this point, I'm staring, looking at my table because I have no clue what to do anymore. Bring out your mini grater and start peeling your 2 cloves because we're gonna have to grate them and put them in the chicken. At least that's what the superior and smarter AI said to me. As you can see, it's super tiny. I got it from my grandma when I visited Syria. She was like, hey, look what I have for you. And I just took it with me to Germany. Once you're done grating the 2 garlic cloves, you want to dump them into the chicken. And you also want to slice a lemon in half. 1/2 of that lemon is to be squeezed into the chicken. What I like to do is I just like to squeeze it into my hand, and I let the lemon juice go between the crevices of my hand. Make sure you also don't have any seeds. As I said, I dropped a little piece of seed and I'm looking for it right now. It definitely takes me way too long to take it out. It slipped back into the bowl. So the recipe called for some salt to taste. I don't know what that means. Like, I can't taste uncooked chicken, so I just gave it like 10 cracks. Pepper, I'm not sure if it also said to taste, but I just also gave it 10 cracks, which in retrospect is definitely way too little. But did I even give it 10 cracks? I think I gave it more. Whatever. You know what? Here's another crack. Here's even 5 more cracks. What am I doing, bro? Why am I squeezing in so much pepper? Afterwards, the recipe called for some fresh thyme, which I had of, luckily. It also called for fresh parsley, which I didn't have of. I decided it's time to glove up again. like OJ Simpson, and I start giving that chicken the works, the everythings. Just give that chicken a good mix, make sure everything's well incorporated, and then just set it to the side. Take out a new bowl. In this bowl, I think we're gonna put in the chopped tomatoes at least and wash them too. The recipe also called for spinach. I wasn't sure if the spinach needed to be washed or not. The package pretty much said, well, in German, not in English, but it said that it's already washed, and I'll trust them. I would like to cut off any steps when it comes to cooking, so I just set it to the side. Decided to take out a few cherry tomatoes. You can't see it right now, but I'm giving these tomatoes a good wash to make sure they're clean and soapy and nice. I didn't use any soap, I just used water. I start cutting the tomatoes in half, just like the recipe called for. At around this point, I probably should have put the pan on the heat to start preheating it, but I was pretty much recording for the first time and I was more focused on the actions themselves and the angles, so it didn't really occur to me at all, and it is something that will end up biting me in the ass later in this video. Once we're done cutting the cherry tomatoes, we want to switch to the stove and start cooking the rice. Make sure you actually do it like a normal person, not like me where some rice spills to the side. The recipe called for 200 grams of white rice. This is one of the biggest mistakes that I made for this recipe. I don't know what possessed me, but instead of like dumping a pinch of salt, I decided to use crackers. I don't know what possessed me. It must have been the fact that I'm recording, but definitely add more salt than I did. New camera angle. Look at that. Not bad. Take out your pan and start preheating it, which is obviously way too late, but it's okay because it gives the chicken and the spices and the salt and the lemon juice more time to incorporate. Put it at around medium to high heat, I believe. Probably medium heat, maybe a little bit high. I don't know. Mine goes from like 1 to 6. I always put it on the 4. I can't lie, rewatching this footage, part of me is like a little embarrassed, but part of me is like, you know what? Might as well just record it, even with all the errors, and just upload it. I feel like too many creators nowadays try to make their stuff like airtight and perfect. I think it comes hand in hand with each other. Like, you know, if you're a perfectionist, you also try to make perfectionist content. But my first video, I have a lot of room for error, which also means I have a lot of room for improvement. It is what it is. I'll just upload it. At around this point, I kind of noticed that the rice is creating a weird foamy bubble mixture. I read online that this happens because you don't really wash it long enough. It looks kind of scary, like a little bubble monster. Even though I've washed it long enough, I think the issue is with the rice that I'm using. I don't eat rice that often, but I also decided to buy a 5-kilogram bag of that specific rice. I've been wanting to switch to like jasmine or basmati rice for a while now. The one that I use is like short grain. I'll put up a picture of it on the screen. And no matter how long I wash it, this always ends up happening where it just turns into a foamy bubble monster. The only times where it didn't happen is where I gave it like a rigorous wash, like for like an hour, just using both hands, both legs. I don't have time for that. It's too much effort. I start to get incredibly impatient with the pan. I bought this pan around a year ago and the heat distribution on it is absolutely horrible. So it takes a long time to preheat on all sides. And I just realized, you know what? We're doing it. I put in some of the chicken into the pan and I realized it's not making the classic pressure washing the toilet bowl with your pee sound. At this point, I realized I'm just as cooked as the food. I was reading a book called Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, and the author mentions that if you put the chicken or the meat into the pan and you don't hear that sizzling sound, it is okay for you to remove it and wait for the pan to preheat even a bit longer and then you put it back in. Apparently, it's a much better idea than to just let the chicken sit into an ice cold pan. After a few minutes, the chicken actually starts cooking a bit and I decide to give it a little flip and I notice it's developed a bit of a brown color, but it's not really what I was expecting from it. It also smelled really good, so I was starting to feel a little bit hopeful about the recipe, but I also realized I might have overcrowded my pan as well. Around 10 minutes have passed and the chicken hasn't really developed any color, and I decide to take out my food thermometer just to be sure that it is actually fully cooked through, even though it doesn't look like that. I always like to choose the biggest, plumpiest piece of chicken. My logic is if that one is cooked, then the rest are definitely cooked, if not cooked dry at this point. I prepare a plate to the side to pretty much scoop out all of the chicken. I felt like I redeemed it, and you will see later when I start plating everything, it kind of looks like it developed some color. After turning down the heat to medium, I decided it's time to dump in the cherry tomatoes and saute them. Even though the recipe told me to add the spinach and the half cherry tomatoes together and just cook them 2 to 3 minutes until softened, part of me felt like that was not really a smart idea because I didn't really want to cook the spinach a bit too fast. I know that the spinach reduces. Maybe I should have added them together. Maybe I shouldn't have done what I did, which is add the tomatoes first, let them cook for 3 minutes. After about 3 to 4 minutes of sauteing the cherry tomatoes, I decide to add in the spinach leaves. Once you can see, the leaves have reduced plenty and they have also softened. After about 5 minutes, I decide that they're done cooking and I dump them into the same plate that the chicken was in, which probably wasn't the smartest idea. The juices started running all over the chicken and it kind of made it feel a bit wet. Even though the recipe called for 2 servings, each serving was around 782 calories, which totals up to 1,600. For my current macro needs, I decided smarter to split the recipe into 3 different servings, which ends up at around 500 calories per serving. So I haven't really tried the recipe yet right now on the recording, but spoiler alert, I tried it already. Like, I think I cooked this on Thursday or maybe Friday, and today is Tuesday, and it was terrible. The rice was not seasoned, the spinach had little to no taste, the tomatoes had little to no taste, the chicken was okay. You could eat the chicken, but you will get no joy from it whatsoever. If you could translate this meal into an emotion, this would be apathy. Of course, it goes without saying that the reason why it probably tastes like that is not because it's a terrible recipe. It could just be the fact that I absolutely messed up a good chunk of the instructions. So at the end of the day, I would rate this recipe at around a 4 out of 10. You don't have to cook it. Maybe if you can follow the recipe real good, try it, but nah, don't do this to yourself.